Critic reviews are rolling in for Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire, that will premiere on Netflix later this month, and they are not good. The critics are absolutely savaging this film. Before we get into this, I'd like to ask you, please hit that subscribe button, hit that bell for notifications so you don't miss any of our future videos here at the Trent Report. With that out of the way, let's get into this here. This is over at Rotten Tomatoes. You can see that it currently sits at 17% on the Tomatometer. Let's take a look at what the actual scores are. It has an average rating of 4 out of 10, only 4 fresh reviews, 20 rotten reviews. If we look at the top critics, 0%. 0% from the top critics. They do not like this film. All 12 of them have it as rotten. So let's go over here and look at what some of these folks are saying. We've got Grace Randolph at Beyond the Trailer, everyone's favorite YouTube analyst and critic, saying that with a little bit of tongue in cheek. She says, more Zack Snyder's Dune than Star Wars. The filmmaker's opus isn't likely to win over new fans, but is a treat for those who appreciate his work. Batella, Fisher, and Bay are the real standouts. I do wish the two-part movie craze would end. I actually agree with Grace there on the two-part movie craze ending. I haven't seen the film, so I can't really judge anything else that she says. I usually do not agree with anything that Grace Randolph says when it comes to her tastes in film, but I will agree that the two-part movie craze should indeed end. I think it is a detriment to storytelling. Fico Caniano at Cine Express, he says, Rebel Moon is Zack Snyder's fun, loving tribute to the likes of Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Seven Samurai, etc. It looks, sounds, and plays great, and even though it takes some time to take off, we'll definitely have you on board for part 2. So praising it there. One of the few. Cameron Frew at Desherto, a pale imitator that fails to forge its own space in the legacy of big screen sci-fi. That's not surprising. That's pretty much how they've been marketing this film. It's Zack Snyder's Star Wars, basically, even though it sounds like it was a Star Wars pitch originally, and then obviously he did not come to an agreement with Lucasfilm and has taken it to Netflix. So that's not surprising that we would see that criticism, given the fact that that's how they are marketing it. We have Clarice Lawfrey at The Independent, one of the top critics. It's a film populated by some of the Justice League Snyder Cut filmmakers' worst impulses, a mess of imagery, some of it attempting to shock, congregated largely around the idea of what might look good in a trailer. Wow, that's a pretty savage review there. David Ehrlich, IndieWire, says a movie that feels like a million isolated storyboards without a single thing welding them together. That's exactly kind of what I got looking at the trailers that I had seen. It didn't look like it had a good through line with 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 the trailer. It didn't really seem to make a lot of sense based on how they were trying to pitch the story. Basically, this young woman who is fleeing this empire, who the empire finds out that comes to the little backwater planet that she's on. She then has to leave the planet to go recruit a bunch of people to start a rebellion in kind of like a Guardians of the Galaxy-esque thing. But that doesn't really make any sense if you're just kind of getting like a little like 12-person team. You're not going to really be starting a rebellion with that. You kind of need a lot of other people, maybe some kind of militia or something like that to start the rebellion. So it didn't really make a lot of sense even on how they were pitching it and selling it. So not surprising there from David Ehrlich. Mark Olson of the LA Times, he says the film is too invested in table setting to be fully enjoyed on its own, at times feeling more like a studio presentation deck than a piece of organic storytelling. Pretty harsh there. David Rooney at the Hollywood Reporter says just seconds into the leaden already. Wow. Sci-fi saga Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire. It's clear the director is back to indulging his worst tendency for self-serious bombast. Owen Gleiberman at Variety says Rebel Moon, while eminently watchable, is a movie built so entirely out of spare parts that it may, in the end, be for Snyder cultists only. I mean, these are just over and over and over again here. Let's skip down here to Mark Cassidy. Rebel Moon is not a complete disaster. Snyder diehards will no doubt forgive its glaring issues, but those who tend to dismiss his work as style over substance are going to feel validated after watching this pretty mess of a movie. And then over at IGN, Hannah Flint says Zack Snyder's space opera is let down by a derivative patchwork script, mediocre action sequences, and a superficial story. So we're hearing that from a lot of these critics. The script is very patchwork, doesn't really connect, and it's just a bunch of action sequences with a superficial story. We're seeing that from a lot of them there. Uh, Christy Puccio, I guess, from Mashable says there's something insidious about a bad movie that has a lot of bonkers stuff in it. In the words of Admiral Akbar, it's a trap. Neil Smith over at Total Film says Snyder's passion project risks becoming subsumed by its own self-importance, but delivers bombastic mayhem and grandiose visuals by the bucket load. So even there, a positive review, even kind of talking about those kind of same themes we're seeing from all of these other reviewers here. Let's just skip down here. Rachel Labonte at Screen Rant says, with Rebel Moon, Zack Snyder is positively bursting with exciting ideas, but they lack compelling characters and a solid plot to hold them up. So pretty much the same thing we're hearing there. And then Edward Douglas, above the line, one of Snyder's worst efforts to date, dull and derivative, with very little to warrant even being a part two, and therefore just an atrocious waste of time and money. Again, none of this really surprises me. They seem to be trying to put the franchise first. They're making a video game. They're doing all these other things. Snyder's always been kind of talking about how he was trying to franchise this before we even saw the first thing. And I'm not surprised that I'm actually surprised we're not seeing any kind of agenda stuff because we know that that is in here. This is how he was promoting the film. If we look over here at Vanity Fair, this was one of the first promo pieces for it where they discussed this character named E. Duffy, um, or a character named Millis, played by an actor named E. Duffy, supposedly a non-binary character. You see the character like the performer is non-binary. There's no such thing. Doesn't even make any sense. It's absolutely ridiculous. Defies logic. And then you have Zack Snyder buying into all of this ideology. So you know that's probably baked into the film as well. And it's probably why it's part of the reason why it's such a mess and why critics don't like it. Anyways, he goes on and talks about this character and even says that the character is they bring something else to the team. I think it's heart. So saying that the character is the heart of the team as well, clearly trying to prop this evil ideology up, pushing it in propaganda as that. And then not only that, but we get this here too, where we're over here at Penguin Random House, where we had a tie-in prequel comic book written by a man pretending to be a woman, calling himself Max Visaggio. So it really isn't surprising that this movie is not turning out well, and it's just it's not doing well because once you're kind of bought into this ideology, you really can't create anything good. Just to kind of paraphrase Tolkien, evil can only twist and destroy. It cannot create. And when you're bought into this ideology that is indeed evil, you really can't create anything good. You only can twist. And we were seeing that with the critics basically describing it as derivative of all of these much better properties such as Star Wars, Dune, and Lord of the Rings. But that is your latest update on Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon. Critics absolutely tearing it apart. As I said here, 0% on the top critics. And overall, it has a 17% rating. But let me know what you guys think of what these critics had to say here. Let me know in the comments below. And remember to always be charitable to each other.